we never saw any signs from the Russians that they would negotiate seriously. We are not really working on a daily basis to make Russia smaller or something. We are just trying to get stronger ourselves.
Do you think the technologies today is more important than nuclear bomb in all the current events we live in?
Well, that's a good question. Countries worldwide, when buying or considering buying new technology, they often ask, has it been tested in Ukraine?
Hello, I'm Jenny Klochko. You're watching my podcast, the platform for guest stories beyond your daily newsfeed. However, today my guest is the great person to discuss the diplomatic aspect of the current events and news. So, how safe and secure can feel the NATO country sharing the border with Russia? Why Estonia is the leader among the European countries supplying help for Ukraine, according to the Kiel Institute. So, what's the reason? Is it painful historical memory or the deep understanding the danger of the Russian chauvinism? So, please welcome. My guest today is Gert Antsu, Director for Ukraine, Moldova, and South Caucasus at the Ministry of Foreign Affairs of Estonia, and former Estonian ambassador to Ukraine, Belgium, and Switzerland. Hello, Gert. How are you today?
Well, good. Summer has finally arrived. I mean, well, it's been here for 10 days. I mean, otherwise, the summer was extremely cold and unpleasant. So, and it's 2 days left until holidays. So, good.
So, looking at the war in Ukraine, and how does it make you feel? I mean, the pride for your country and how helpful, supportive Estonia is, and the work you done on different levels and among the just general public and the politicians, or you have the shivers because the Baltics can be the next step for this Russian killing machine if they carry on moving.
Well, I am proud, of course, and it's been also part of my own job to support Ukraine. Estonia has, at least, well, given that we are a small country, at least per capita, we have given a lot of military assistance, and otherwise as well. I mean, being one of the first countries to start reconstruction, for example, in Žtomir region. But then again, well, it's only a supportive role. It's still the Ukrainians who bear the brunt of Russian attacks every day and night, and the brave Ukrainians fighting back against the Russian aggressor. So that's so much harder. Whether I'm worried, well, I'd say, well, worried is not the right word. I mean, my heart is bleeding, obviously, for Ukraine and Ukrainians. And I'm not, obviously, well, I mean, Russian designs are not, could easily be that they are not just limited to Ukraine, sure. But Estonia being a member of NATO, the European Union, I would still think it's unlikely that there would be an attack on Estonia or the Baltic states. But of course, in order to make it sure, well, that's why we are sharply increasing our own defense budget, upgrading our military capabilities to make sure that this would not happen here.
Do you feel the sort of the happiness that your country joined NATO in 90s, it kind of like secure themselves and did all preventative measures to just in case if Soviet Union, will try to resurrect like right now is happening.
Yeah, well, for us it was 2004, and together with at the same time when we joined the European Union, and there was really no doubt for us. I mean, that was part of integrating with the West, our return to the West, if you wish. So there was never any desire to remain in a gray zone in between, or I don't know, to even if there might have been one or two people who said, well, let's try to reap the benefits from both sides. I mean, that was a very much a minority view. And so we chose the West right away. That was the first opportunity to join NATO for us. I mean, having to convince all the NATO members back then, and yeah, no second thoughts really.
So, recently, President Zelensky, with the help of the parliament, did some changes affecting the anti-corruption agencies and the people on the streets. And obviously, it seems like he's ready to restore, which was changed while we're talking. It hasn't happened yet. So by the time this interview is going to be published, we will know definitely. And what's your take on this?
Well, besides security, winning the war against the Russian aggression, obviously the future of Ukraine as an EU member state, as a successful economy, well, it all depends a lot on the rule of law in the country, on the successful fight against the corruption. So there should be no slipping back here. And the law was unexpected and unfortunate. And I'm again very proud of them. Ukrainians, young people or otherwise, who took to the streets. But then again, it's been also the friends of Ukraine, close friends and partners, including my own country. Our president, Alar Karis, talked to President Zelensky on Monday. So to convey the message that really the only option for Ukraine to move forward also on the way to EU membership, it's to do its utmost to uphold the rule of law and to fight corruption. So I'm glad that President Zelensky has introduced a new draft, and I very much hope that it will be adopted shortly. And it's really, I think the signal both from inside Ukraine and outside has been crystal clear.
Yeah, it's the rumor is now MPs are hesitating because they're afraid the new cases anti the corruption allegations going to be against them. So in looking at it, I think it's uh, a part of this attempt of President Zelensky. I consider it as a sort of mistake, but what do I know about politics or any of that? But at the same time, Ukrainian people, they really can let know the government and the rulers sort of like when they not agree, isn't it? And there was the rule among the journalists and the general public, like not to criticize the president, the government, because we are in the war. But it seems like they exercise their right to say their no. So we'll see.
Yeah, well, it's only logical as well. I mean, that there was the kind of common understanding in Ukraine or for the partners not to criticize during the war because winning the war is really the most important thing. But then again, you should sort of behave within the limits that Ukraine has actually voluntarily taken onto itself. I mean, it's not the European Union that is forcing Ukraine to become a member state. It's still Ukraine that is applying and has undertaken to fulfill all the conditions. So, in this sense, the criticism pointing it out that that it would not help you to get there, but it was only logical.
Well, Estonia is a post-Soviet country, and Russia always tried to bribe countries with Soviet past to interfere into politics. What's your maybe some personal tips against to fight the corruption, which can affect countries, not just sort of, you know, individual people on individual level, but also the security and safety of the country, like it's in Ukraine.
Yes. Well, um, whenever anyone tells that Estonia is a post-Soviet country, you, as an Estonian, well, not only as an Estonian diplomat, but as an Estonian overall, you shudder a bit. I mean, really, well, you know, you're right in the sense that we share a common past with Ukraine in this sense as well. Although I would still like to point out that we've come a long way in the sense that for many, many years we have been in the top 10 in the world as regards corruption or the lack of corruption. Not quite on the level of the Nordic countries, but very close to them. Or, the global ranking of freedom, for example, we are currently ranking first. So, not resembling anything post-Soviet in this sense, and I'm really proud of that. Tips, well, yeah, you said it yourself as well. I mean, beating corruption. That's one of the main keys, really. I mean, for all sorts of reasons, and for investment to come in, like we had already since the 90s, or for the people to believe in the future of the country. Even though Estonia, around 20 years ago, there was quite an outflux of people, not on the level of Latvia, Lithuania, Poland, perhaps, but still. But I mean, you have to make your own country the best possible version of your country to make sure that people would not want to leave, and or well, like with the Ukrainians who are currently abroad, that they would want to come back. So fight against corruption, it's not a topic for some brave, maybe idealistic and naive activists, but it's really crucial matter for the whole country. And but well, okay, you need those crazy activists as well to make it clear to everyone that you can win. Also, you can beat the corruption.
Yeah, absolutely. And how, in general, the Estonian people attitude towards Ukraine, I see, looking at the figures, being, the leader among the European countries and not beating by the size Ukraine and being so enthusiastic. I suspect there might be difference between the government and the general public. What's the sentiment was back then, 3.5 years ago, when full-scale invasion, and now? Is it changing?
I'm very happy to say that it's not really changing. Perhaps there is, you know, you get used to things, you get tired of things. I mean, the war is a terrible, terrible things, but also, unfortunately, life is such that also the people in Ukraine are used to it, as terrible as it sounds. So, but even if Estonians are perhaps used to it, I mean, the support to Ukraine and the Ukrainians to Ukrainian victory, it's on the same level. Okay, donations in monetary terms have gone down. That's true. Also, well, because Estonia, unfortunately, has had over the last 3-4 years the highest rate of inflation in the European Union, and also the economic growth has been practically zero. Well, also due to the war. But regardless of that, I mean, the emotional support is very much there, and the practical support from the government is there, even if perhaps people may have fewer chances to chip in themselves. But there is no populism of this kind that you would see in some other places, perhaps, that, oh, well, isn't it enough to support Ukraine or something? And well, we have a populist party who tried to exploit it at some point, but it didn't work. So we are safely on side.
It's interesting. Estonian technologies. famous worldwide, and how everything computerized. And recently, by the way, I'm sure you're aware, Russia has got this one of the biggest hackers attack, and apparently it's Ukrainian and Belarus hackers sort of made it happen. Do you think the technologies today is more important than nuclear bomb in all the current events we live in?
Well, that's a good question. I mean, yes, in the sense that well, nuclear bomb was also a very cutting edge technology. Well, more than half a century ago, three quarters of a century ago. Today, yes, we have, especially Ukraine, obviously has technologies that work extremely well on the battlefield and in the cyber domain as well. So Ukraine not only has the most modern army in the world, in the sense where all the modern innovations are the next day or the day before tested on the battlefield and successfully, but also probably by now the best hackers in the world. So well, this is the only way to of course to manage to fight back against the aggressor. So that technology of course is important, and we are seeing the innovation in drone technology, for example, on a daily basis. And what I hear is that countries worldwide, when buying or considering buying new technology, they often ask, has it been tested in Ukraine? In the sense that that's really the cutting edge. I mean, again, for very unfortunate reasons, but then again, the ingenuity of Ukrainians, the IT people, the industry. Well, I know myself as well, people who are doing completely different things, humanitarian, kind of all sorts of different things before the war, and now have got into drone production, for example. So basically, yeah, that's a major asset for Ukraine, of course.
Yeah, and if you remember, there was before General Zaluzhny was appointed as ambassador in London. In his article, he was saying that technologies will be the game changer in this war, and it was in the previous war. So who knows? Who knows? And it's cheaper to maintain, cheaper to produce, isn't it, than any nuclear program? Um, as apparently Estonia is a leader in cybersecurity, and is this something you discuss with your colleagues and maybe sharing tips with the UK or US, is something, behind the closing doors among the diplomats, or there are other matters that on the priority list?
Well, there is close cooperation, definitely, in the field of cyber threats and fighting against them. Maybe not so much for the diplomats, but for the real experts dealing with it on a daily basis. As about Estonia, yes, we have been good at that. We have also shared our experiences with Ukraine. But then again, it's just that we got an early start. The famous cyber attacks against Estonia in 2007. So we had to learn quickly. And yes, well, digital technologies have been overall important in the country. So it's been a necessity to be good at that.
You experienced diplomat, and I don't expect a straight answer from you, but some, I hope, behind the closed doors. And you're one of those countries that you don't need to explain about this alternatives war tools of Russia, the propaganda, the uh, ridiculous myth of the great Russian culture, and so on and so forth. But why do you think the politicians, the diplomats from other countries, still don't get it, still um, buy it? And as an example, Just yesterday, I was listening the statistics, and countries like France, Italy, they're still number one and number two for Russian tourists to come. And nevertheless, sanctions, nevertheless, all the changes happened, and it's not general public. It's quite expensive to fly somewhere, to get visa, and then fly to Italy or France. And all those tourist visa, for example, the poisoning in the UK, those men arrived on tourist visa. And still, this kind of thing, circulation, still alive. Why do you think the decision makers in the Western countries, in the EU countries, they still don't get this danger?
Well, I would qualify my answer a bit in the sense that if you read articles, books published, say, 5 years ago, or think back to the attitude that there was among the Western politicians, the Western public, journalists about Russia and perceived threat from Russia, then it's changed so much. I mean, for the EU member states, for NATO allies, Russia clearly is by far the biggest threat, existential threat. And I mean, there is not much doubting that, or that never mind Ukraine. Russia tried to convince the West for the last decades that Estonia was a fascist country. Well, again, coming back to us being number one in the freedom ranking in the world now. So no one believes those those arguments, those Russian propaganda points any longer. And but you can still draw a line to well to the things which are not seen as related to the war or security, and you can still kid yourself that Russian tourists, well, that means money for the shops, restaurants, souvenir stalls, and it hasn't got anything to do with the war, or getting to the cultural field that Pushkin and Dostoevsky don't have anything to do with the war. I think we still have got work to do there, and yes, it's unfortunate that not all European countries see Russian tourists as a threat, a negative, or at least a challenge to be dealt with. But the situation is still, I mean, the glass is rather more than half full than half empty.
Yeah, unfortunately. Again, not expecting the direct answer, but hope for something. What are the main challenges in dealing with Russian diplomats? For example, I recently had a conversation with one of my sources from Ukrainian intelligence, and I was sort of asking about this Turkey negotiations group and everything. And these sources say that it's nothing to do with diplomacy. They just come into threat. They just come into it's more for the tick for President Trump. Putin had conversation. I send the team, and especially when Medinsky is the head of the delegation, it's a big marker. And by the way, from Russian sources as well, that it's nothing to do with diplomacy, nothing to do with peace or negotiations. We're just doing it just like a ride. So, what are the big challenges for you to deal with this diplomacy when there's no diplomacy? When there's declaration to do negotiations and there's no negotiation, there's no willingness to find the common ground.
Well, I would go for a rather broad definition of diplomacy. In this sense, it is diplomacy. Even if you are negotiating in bad faith, you don't come to reach an agreement. But I mean, it's not the first time in world history or in the history of diplomacy, right? But well, we have been of the position right from the beginning that yes, it's good that the sides meet, but we never saw any signs from the Russians that they would negotiate seriously, or that they would abandon their root, so to say, root causes, well, the denazifying and demilitarizing Ukraine and what have you, and they are sticking to that. Again, I think even the slowest people in the West are coming to realize now that that's the case, and there is not much hope to reach an agreement next time they would meet in Istanbul, if there would be such a meeting. Well, presumably as there have been already several. At some point, there will be one again, but um, yeah. So diplomacy, unpleasant from our side, of course. People continue to die in Ukraine from Russian bullets and missiles and drones. Um, and well, we clearly understand that we have to help Ukraine militarily so that Ukraine would gain the advantage, and the Russians would need to take negotiations more seriously.
Um, colleagues, diplomatic colleagues from the Russian side, I mean, such statements like Maria Zakharova or Minister Lavrov makes lots of there's a lot of memes. There's a lot of shock about how they have this diplomatic discussion or dispute or the statements. And there's also, if to compare, there's a cult of the Soviet diplomacy. It seems like Russia pretends they follow this postulates. Do you think it's more narratives for the internal audience to show that Russia will not obey, Russia has own say, or it's the war, and this is war diplomacy? Because this diplomacy is never straightforward, isn't it? It's always sort of like something underline, something meaning, gesture sometimes speaks volume more than words.
Well, it's a good question whether they believe it themselves as well, all the well, fairly ridiculous things they are saying. But I think the majority of the Russians do, and could be that the people in power as well. That Russia, is an exceptional civilization that has its own path, nothing to do with the degenerate West. Well, very much like it was in the Soviet time, right? I mean, basically copy paste, nearly. And unfortunately, it's there is the debate, or luckily getting now resolved as well, whether it's Putin or Russia more in general. Well, clearly, it's the Russian chauvinism and imperialism that is to blame for that. And I very much like how Svetlana Alexievich, the Nobel laureate, um, describes it in her books, interviewing elderly Russian ladies who are all saying that, well, if the rest of the world wouldn't be afraid of us, my life would have no meaning. So basically, what Zakharova is saying that, well, look, those degenerate people in the West, they are afraid of us. We are so great. It's, well, millions and millions of people in Russia who do believe that. And whether she as an individual believes it, I mean, then it's besides the point, really. It's kind of a collective lunacy, basically, and they are all part of it one way or another.
Do you think there's a lot of speculation in Ukraine and in the West, in the media, sort of discussion? So, when the neighbors of Russia finally feel safe, when is the Putin gone, or when Russia is dissembled as an empire and forget about this ambitious to restore great Russian empire and so on and so forth? Do you think it does really need to destruct this something big and something vi- violent, and then we all can just be relieved and get on with our lives and restore everything which has been destroyed.
Well, you're right. We cannot relax before something happens to Russia, something positive. Either it becomes democratic or becomes weaker, becomes smaller. Well, Russia becoming truly democratic, I don't see it really happening in the foreseeable future. Not only because of, well, again, it's not about Putin, right? It's about the preferences of the Russian people and the Russian psyche. You know, you can go back to Tsarist times or Ivan Grozny or how much you want in history. Russia falling apart. Well, this is something that the West is not clamoring for. I mean, we are not really working on a daily basis to make Russia smaller or something. We are just trying to get stronger ourselves, militarily, economically, well, building resilient, well-functioning societies and countries. But what shape Russia will take, well, that's up to the Russians themselves, including the ethnic minorities living in Russia. No one can do it for them in this sense. And so my most realistic prediction is that, well, as we are already seeing clear signs of Russian economy suffering, and there's there is no reason to believe that they can turn it around somehow with this war economy. So Russia constantly getting weaker is one factor that will influence or influences our security positively. But about the rest, we'll have to see.
Is it still painful to remember that Estonia and other Baltic countries were sacrificed basically by Churchill and Roosevelt when they did it, when they sort of like gave up or didn't fight for the Baltics to stay independent, and these countries became occupied by the Soviets till 90s, or the country just moved on. It's unpleasant page in history, but there is no strong pain there.
Well, myself, I'm a huge fan of history, reading lots of history books, and Estonians, you know, be a small country, suffered a fair bit, so history is important to us. But at the same time, it's sort of dangerous to get stuck in this history war. And yes, the post Second World War settlement was unfortunate, unfair, but then again, well, it was based on military realities. I mean, then someone, I mean, the US, the UK, Europe, well, Western Europe, would have had to start a war against the Soviet Union to reclaim what? The Baltics, Poland, Eastern Europe. Well, that was clearly not on the cards. So, unfortunate, yes, but actually, you should take the positives out of it, out of the history. And we have really worked a lot for the last 35 years of our regained independence to become a responsible partner in Europe, in the world, you know, a constructive EU member state, pulling our weight as a NATO member, supporting Ukraine at this hour. So doing our part so that you know the famous phrase of Prime Minister Chamberlain that about Czechoslovakia, that this is a faraway country about which we don't know much, so that people in the West wouldn't be able to say about Estonia that this is a well, faraway country about which we know nothing.
How painful to know those things, isn't it? And it's just ugh, the occupation. What role does Estonia aim to play on the global stage, especially within NATO and EU, in the current political climate?
Well, in the current climate, everything else is really secondary to, again, supporting Ukraine. Military support, economic support, inside the EU, NATO, as much or as little as NATO is involved, but then increasingly in the coalitions of the willing of those countries who really want to support Ukraine. So showing an example, convincing others, using the political capital that we have gathered as a constructive country over the last decade. Basically, we are willing to spend a lot of that on Ukraine, and we are doing it.
How has the war changed Estonia's defense push, investment, or public sentiment? Do you feel this influence of the war on major things to feel for people to feel comfortable, for people to feel secure? Do people invest more to improve things within their own country, or they just like, waiting what's going to happen next? Is it going to be war? Because even just the current days, the defense ministers in the EU, they discuss, and how strong are the bridges? Can we supply quickly tanks and ammunition? Will it take days or it will take months? So there's a pre-war mood even here.
Well, in times of insecurity, of course, there is less investment, and people are thinking twice, well, whether this or that action, I don't know, buying a flat or any other action is worthwhile in these circumstances. But then again, I would say it's not really overwhelming. I mean, people's faith in our security, in our allies, is is strong. So I mean, you don't really see, I don't know, people moving to work in Spain or something, which they would do, what they would do if they would be really afraid.
When you were ambassador in Ukraine, and do you miss that time? What did you enjoy the most of being there? I mean, of course, it was pre-war. It's not nothing like this now. So you didn't need to spend time in the bomb shelter or, you know, dealing with that kind of stress and the consequences.
Well, it wasn't completely pre-war in the sense that there was still the Russian war against Ukraine ongoing, not just at such a scale. But I visited the villages, towns close to the contact line, and saw it with my own eyes, or visited the hospital in Dnipro where the wounded soldiers were being treated, and that had a huge impact on my own outlook on the world. Well, politically or geopolitically speaking, but also in more human terms, let's say. And well, I grew to love Ukraine a lot. So I'm very happy that even if I left Ukraine in 2019, I've been able to work with Ukraine ever since in my different roles since then. And I still get to travel to Ukraine to see friends, to see Kiev. When you ask what I liked the most or what I would miss the most, Well, inevitably, it's the people. I mean, having a lot of close Ukrainian friends, obviously not seeing them so frequently, also because of the war, it's painful. But also, well, the physical Ukraine, the cities, the streets, I know very well, and yeah, it's a big part of my life. But luckily, every time I go, I bring a huge pile of Ukrainian books with me. So I'm still surrounded by the Ukrainian language, on a practically daily basis, or well, reading my daily news in Ukrainian, but books as well, and using every opportunity to speak Ukrainian, either sometimes online or with Ukrainian taxi drivers in Tallinn. So it's a lot of Ukraine in my life, regardless.
How fascinating. You left Ukraine, but Ukraine haven't left you, isn't it? Oh, thank you very much. I'm so grateful. I can't express how grateful I am. And I want to wish you lots of energy, inspiration, and thank you for everything you do. And hope we all feel safe very soon, hopefully.
Thank you very much, and well, thank you for your work, and well, Ukrainians are the biggest inspiration to me as well. So we are in a common fight.
Thank you for watching. Please don't forget to like, share, subscribe. Also, now you can become the member of my podcast and support me and my team to carry on inviting guests and covering the best stories we can for you. So we would be grateful if you do this, and also it would support our channel a lot. So like, share, subscribe, at least you can do for us. Thank you for watching, and I'm Jenny Klochko. Take care.